The 2022 New York Giants season is officially behind us. But before we spring forward, we're going to take one more look back. I'm going to give you positional grading breakdowns, and we'll give out some awards too. Stay tuned. What's up, Giants fans? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tommy's Takes. I'm your host, Tommy G. Could have been anywhere in the world for this offseason, but you're here with me. I appreciate that. Please hit that subscribe button, like, comment, turn notifications on. You could also check me out on Twitter, TommyG105. And of course, please check out super talented Giants Country team. Awesome group of content creators. Whether you're looking for articles, podcasts, interviews, you name it, Giants Country got it. And let's get right into it. It was a remarkable season for the New York Giants. Most people picked them at 6-7 wins for the season. They come within one game of the NFC Championship, but unfortunately, the season came crashing down with a 38-7 drubbing at the Link versus the Eagles. And something you've seen in that game was the Eagles were just far more talented in a few different positional areas. So today, we're going to break down positional groupings for the Giants. We're going to go from top to bottom, from special teams, offense, defense, GM, head coach, assistant coaches, you name it. We're going to really break down, see where the Giants excelled, see where they need to improve, and where they need to help themselves with the draft and free agency. Special teams, number one. Let's go with the two right feet. We'll go with Jamie Gilliam. He was ranked 18th with a career best 46.8 per punt. 25th in net punting yards, though. A long punt of 69 yards. One punt blocked and another punt dropped. Listen, flat out, when it comes to Gilliam, he has a rocket for a leg. Too inconsistent. Far too inconsistent. Too many shanks, especially towards the end of the season. And, when you're a team that, you might be going against a handful of teams in a season that they're just more talented, they're further ahead in their build than you, you can't have block punts. You can't have drop punts. You can't have 30-yard punts. So Gilliam really hurt this special teams grade. Luckily for him, you have Graham Gano. He was awesome again. 29 of 32 field goals. That tied him for 8th in his career with 90.6 kick percentage rate. Awesome. I mean, he was fantastic. His long was 57, third longest of his career. He's 35 years old, made 32 of 34 extra points, which, if you watch Dallas last couple of games before they got booted, extra points are no short things. So Graham Gano was really, a mainstay, somebody you could rely on. Awesome to have a kicker like that in your back pocket. He did a great job. Nothing but positive for Graham Gano. Though, wish he could have hit that field goal versus Washington in the first matchup, but nobody's perfect. So, Graham Gano really did his thing. 22nd in kick return yardage allowed. 16th in punt return yardage allowed. Mediocre to bad. I don't think the punt coverage, kick coverage teams were that good. And that goes back to depth, right? You're supposed to have depth guys that can play on coverage teams. Those depth guys were starting, playing significant snaps. So I don't anticipate it to be as big of a problem next season. But, the special team coach, Tom McGonahy, got to watch out, man. Wasn't a good performance, and it hurt this team several times. You also had the 2 fumbles by Richie James in Seattle. That was extremely costly. Like I said, you had a block punt, a drop punt. So areas of improvement there in special teams. I gave them an overall grade of a D+. It was close to a C-, but Gilliam too inconsistent. Coverage teams too inconsistent. And overall, just the numbers weren't there. So that's where I'm at with the special teams. We'll move right along to everybody's favorite, linebackers. So this was a tough one. Inside linebacker was arguably the weakest position on his Giants roster. Took a big shot when Blake Martinez got cut right before the season started. Darian Beavers tears his ACL before the season starts. He was looking good in camp, right? That leaves you with Tay Crowder, Mr. Irrelevant, Micah McFadden, rookie. Jalen Smith picked up after the season started, and that unit struggled tremendously. Micah McFadden looked like a rookie. He got a significant amount of snaps, which is good experience-wise, but looked like a rookie. Jalen Smith always looks like he's running around with his hair on fire. He's running here and there, but when you really break down the film, poor technique, it's not reading holes properly, poor shoulder leverage, taking bad angles, not tackling physically enough sometimes, you name it. He had a tough season. And, when you have a player like that that's all over the field, that makes tackles, that's always pumped, excited, sometimes you can get lost in that. And you could say, wow, this guy's pretty good. And he wasn't bad. But, I mean, if you look at his numbers and you look at this rush defense and him against the rush, it was not good. And he was probably the best linebacker out of the bunch, which is sad. Tate Crowder was benched late in the season, decided to voice his concerns on social media. Never a good idea. He was cut late in the season, picked up by the Steelers. Again, similar to Smith, didn't have a good season, washed up way too much against the run. Teams had a ton of success running against this Giants team when Crowder was out there. And unfortunately, when he was gone, it didn't get any better. Giants picked up Landon Collins to play linebacker. They picked up Gerard Davis towards the very end of the season, but didn't matter. And the Giants defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, his defenses of choice were, dime, cover 6, where he wanted secondary on the field. He did not want some of these linebackers on the field, and that's why they loved cover 6, and they loved having their 4 or 5 defensive backs out there, because these linebackers really, really struggled. And rush defense, like I said, NFL's second worst rush defense. Giants gave up the second most rushing yards to opponents, and that was from week 1 all the way to the divisional playoff game where they essentially got ran out of the stadium. If that game was 5 or 6 quarters, the Giants would have given up 500-600 yards rushing. That's how bad it was. It was endless. So I thought the inside linebackers were poor all season. But you knew that. You knew that coming into the season. When Blake Martinez got cut, which you didn't even know what you were going to get from Blake. He's coming off a torn ACL. He's an older player. You didn't even know what you were going to get from him, and that was your best inside linebacker. So once you lost him, man, it was going to be brutal. Coverage-wise, these inside linebackers did not play well. Giants allowed 116 quarterback rating going to tight ends. That's some of the secondary too. It's not just on inside linebackers, but when inside linebackers were in coverage, it was not pretty. You also have PFF grades for each of those linebackers I mentioned, all in the 50s or less. And, I'll be using PFF grades as kind of an example. It's not the Bible. It gives you a ballpark. I'm just using it as a ballpark. Whether you like PFF grades, you don't like them, that's fine. I could care less, but it does give a good ballpark number. So I'll be using it for some of these positional breakdowns. All right, now we'll go to outside linebacker. Outside linebacker was a little bit better. Mostly due to a solid season by Kayvon Thibodeau. Even though he lacked a little bit in the sack production area, he still showed the passion for a big play. He had the game-sealing sack versus Lamar Jackson and Baltimore. He had, of course, the grand slam on primetime versus Washington. The sack, forced fumble, fumble recovery, touchdown, strip, all that, all in one. Those were huge plays for this Giants team. High motor kid, made a tremendous amount of high motor plays from one side of the field to the next. He has to figure out how to get through these holding calls. These holding calls have just been destroying him. Even up until the final game in Philly, those holding calls were brutal. But I thought he had a solid season. Yeah, the 4 sacks is a little concerning. You'd like to see him with at least 7 or 8 sacks as a top 5 pick, but I know he'll get there. I'm confident in Kayvon Thibodeau. He has the skill sets to do it, and he will. He also faced injury to start the season. Missed the first 3 games, which, hurt his progression. But he came back with a bang. And you want to talk about injuries, and you're going to probably, you're going to hear injuries a lot throughout this positional breakdown. The linebacking core we just did, Blake Martinez coming off a torn ACL. Giants decided to cut him. That was probably mostly due to him recovering from that injury. Now we got outside linebacker. Thibodeau missed the first 3 games, and his counterpart, Azeez Ojulari. Probably one of the more frustrating players on the Giants this season. So Ojulari only could play 7 games. He finishes with 5.5 sacks in 7 games. That makes you say, my goodness, what could have happened if he played 17 games? But you don't know. And that's the scary part. Very frustrating. Broke the rookie sack record for the Giants in his rookie year last year and just couldn't stay healthy. Got hurt in training camp. Came back, got hurt. Came back, got hurt. And that was just the motion of the season. I don't know if he bulked up too much. He came back in the offseason looking like He-Man. Incredible Hulk, whatever you want to call it. I think that may have hurt him. Maybe his body wasn't accepting of that muscle gain. Not sure what it was. But whatever it is, Giants and Azeez have to get that figured out because that was a big hurt. That really hurt this team, especially down the stretch. He wasn't really available. So Jihad Ward thought he did a solid job versus the run, providing physicality at the point of attack. Didn't really give too much in the way of pass rush, but also a great leader off the field. Definitely kept his team pumped up, so I do give him some brownie points for that. You have Tamon Fox, showed some pop tackling, but still very, very raw. He graded out very, very low MPFF's gradings. Ellerson Smith, another disappointing injury-riddled season. I'll be surprised if he's back next year. O'Shane Zimenez flashed to start the season, then kind of faded back into obscurity where he's been. So overall, it's tough because the inside linebacking core was the worst on this team. That and wide receiver. But I gave the group a D+. The reason I gave it a D+ was inside linebacking core and Aziz injury. Really, the only thing left to grade his team on positively was Kayvon Thibodeau. And that's why they got a D+, not a D-, not an F. That's how bad the inside linebacking core was. So, all right. Secondary. Another injury group here, guys and gals. Lost cornerback number 2, Aaron Robinson, for the year. Played very few snaps. He had the emergency appendectomy right away, basically, as soon as the season started. Comes back versus Chicago, tears his ACL, MCL, partial tear. Never saw him again. You lost to Dory Jackson for 7 weeks. You lost Xavier McKinney for 6 weeks. And despite that, I thought this unit still did a pretty solid job, honestly. They held opponents to a 60.1 completion percentage, which was pretty good. That ranked for 7th in the NFL. Unfortunately, where they gave it back was interceptions. They ranked dead last in the NFL with 6 interceptions. Dropped some timely ones, especially down the stretch. That hurt them. They ranked in the middle of the pack in explosive plays given up. Neither good nor bad. They did, I would say, increase with frequency a little bit more as the season grew on, but still overall pretty good. And where I thought the secondary did a really good job was staying disciplined, focused, tackling, communicating, understanding the defensive game plan. A lot was asked of the secondary by defensive coordinator Wink Martindale. One, once they realized this inside linebacking core was not going to do much. 2, Wink likes to blitz, so he's going to have them corners on an island out there. And that's where things kind of got hectic for this team. Once Robinson went down, boom, picked up Fabian Moreau. He was able to fill in very nicely. But once you lost to Dory, Fabian Moreau bumps up. Now he's playing the number 1, number 2 corner, and he struggled mightily. So injuries really, really hurt this unit. You have Darnay Holmes, walking penalty the whole season, grabby, poor technique, sloppy technique, didn't have a good year at all. You had the Adoree Jackson injury, returning punts. I think Adoree had a very good season, shadowing number 1 receivers. Again, he's not the type to get a lot of interceptions, but he did a really good job. Solid tackler. He's great in man. He's good in zone. I thought Adoree did a very good job. You also had, once Aaron Robinson's injury happened, it just threw things into chaos. It really did. And Darnay Holmes couldn't step up. You had Nate McLeod out there for a little bit. He helped out. Again, not a starting cornerback. So, all in all, honestly, if you want to grade this secondary unit, you're probably going to say before the Adoree McKinney injuries, after the Adoree McKinney injuries, right? And let's break them down. Let's break McKinney down now, right? Struggled to live up to his hype, I felt, from 2021. He's a solid player. He's the captain of the defense, right? He's the play caller on the defense. Doesn't get a lot of game-breaking plays, unfortunately. Still has a very, very bright future with this team. It was unfortunate he had to miss that big chunk of games for such a silly injury, but it did happen. His partner in crime, Julian Love, solid, I would say. He's basically jack of all trades, master of none. Should be interesting to see if the Giants are willing to pay $6, $7, $8 million for him. I don't think they should, personally. Great guy, great teammate. Doesn't really do a lot in impact plays, but he had a solid season. I don't want to take that away from him, but, wasn't much else there in the secondary. Rookie third-round pick, Cordell Flott, he was injured often early. Did show some promise towards the end of the season, especially in that wild card playoff. He had that big pass breakup, the second to last play of the game. So Giants excited what they're going to get from Flott next year. Dane Beltman at safety played significant snaps to start the year. Unfortunately, might have got a little bit in the doghouse, or maybe coaches didn't think he was ready for that moment. His snaps did decrease as the season went along, but still, young kid. Giants like what they saw from him. veteran safeties, Jason Pinnock, Tony Jefferson, they contributed. They did what they had to do. Joe Shane did a great job picking guys up midseason. Coaching staff, great job getting them ready, getting them into the game quickly. Um, you know, I think a lot of their success was scheme related. I think Wink Martindale does a great job of putting his corners in a good position, even with the extra pressure he does put on them. And at the same time, they held it down. They were in cover six a lot. They were in dime a lot. This secondary held it down with all the injuries. I gave them a C plus overall. Very close to B minus, but unfortunately, just not enough there. I look for the Giants to add a couple more pieces this season, off season, whether that's in the draft, whether that's free agency, or both. I look for them to add a few more pieces, but I give the secondary C plus. All right. Interior defensive line, right? So this is an interesting one because it's led by fourth-year pro out of Clemson, Dexter Lawrence. Put on a truly dazzling performance this season, utterly dominant. Giants finally move him to the zero tech position. What does he do? 28 pressures as a zero tech defensive tackle this season. Who was the next closest behind him? 7 pressures. That's how dominant Dexter Lawrence was. So started right there. He was a force against the run. Giants' highest rated player overall per PFF, 91.6 grade. You throw in 7.5 sacks. Truly remarkable. I don't know if I've ever seen a interior defensive lineman have a season like this on the Giants. Obviously we've seen Aaron Donald, Warren Sapp in the NFL history, but as far as the Giants, this was really a historic performance for interior D-line. So, you get a high grade right off the bat for Dexter Lawrence. His partner in crime, Leonard Williams, quiet season, only 2.5 sacks. He did create a lot of pressure with Hurry's QB hits. Don't take that away from him. Not as good of a season against the run. He had a 75 run grade. You would think he would have did a little bit more with Dexter next to him. That's what a lot of people are alluding to. It is what it is, right? You own up to the stats. Giants got ran on. They got ran on up the middle. Teams ran at Leo a lot. So, it's a mirror moment. I still think he had a solid season. A lot of solid seasons on this defense. But was quiet, with teams, I wouldn't say attacking him versus the run, but they were aiming at him. And really the problem was with this interior D-line was depth. Once the Giants lost Nick Williams, DJ Davidson, that depth went straight down the hole. It was brutal. You had Justin Ellis play 377 snaps, put up a 29.2 grade, getting dominated in the trenches. I mean, he got one hand pancaked in the divisional playoff game. Never a good look. And it was brutal. Giants defense struggled to stop the run all year, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse, unfortunately. Giants need depth along that interior defensive line. Leo's probably going to come back at an adjusted rate. I highly doubt he comes back at that price, but Giants need to add a little bit of meat up there because that was not cutting it. They literally got ran out of the playoffs in that divisional game. Overall, B minus. I have to give this unit a B minus. That's how dominant Dexter Lawrence was. Leo was solid. I thought that the unit was solid before the 2 injuries I mentioned to Davidson and Williams, and they just fell off a cliff the second half of the year. But I still give it a B minus. You got Leo, you got Dexter Lawrence, those 2 above mentioned players that got hurt. They'll be back next year. Might add another piece in there though. I really don't want to see Justin Ellis back. Shout out to him, but playing almost 400 snaps at 29 grade, that's where a lot of the opponent's rushing yards came from. So, running backs, this is a good one. So, I thought the running back position was one of the best positions for the Giants this season. It starts with Saquon Barkley, obviously. After several injury-plagued years, people saying he didn't have it anymore, really put on a clinic, over 1,300 yards. You got him for 12 touchdowns, including the playoffs. Several game-breaking highlight reel plays. Tremendous leader for the Giants. Went and improved his pass pro, which was a big knock on him. Really nothing bad you could say about Barkley. The team didn't choose to use him as a receiver a lot. When they did, he was productive. He did an awesome job. Shout out to Saquon Barkley, Pro Bowler. Well-deserved. Should be interesting to see what happens with him in the offseason. We won't get to that yet. That'll be for another show. But I thought Barkley did a phenomenal job. Did everything that was asked of him and more. And listen, when Matt Breida came in, when Brightwell came in, I thought they ran hard. I thought they ran effective. You seen Brightwell towards the end of the season pick up some steam. I thought all three of them, I thought ran really hard. I thought all three of them did a pretty solid job. Barkley obviously gets the lion's share of the carries. That's always going to be that way as long as he's on the Giants. But I thought the running back position graded out at about an A minus. Really no knocks there at all. They did a great job. Can't complain. Giants had the sixth best rushing offense in the NFL. Give these guys some credit. Okay, next up, wide receivers. Whew. Where do we even begin, right? So, Giants start the year. Top four receivers are Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, Wan'Dale Robinson, rookie. And before you know it, all hell breaks loose. Giants quickly bench Golladay for Sills in week 2. They lose Shepard to a torn ACL in week 3. They trade Toney by week 7. And Wan'Dale goes down in week 8 with a torn ACL. So literally within 8 weeks, they lost their entire receiving core. And it was tough because Wan'Dale was having a career game. Obviously, he's a rookie, but he was having his career game over 100 yards versus Jacksonville. Boom, torn ACL. That was unfortunate. So, had to retool, right? Now you have Richie James, Darius Slayton, right? You still have Sills in the picture. And a really quiet pickup by Joe Shane. Early November, Bills receiver. Young, was hurt often, didn't really get a chance to fulfill his potential. Went under the radar. Isaiah Hodgins. Round of applause for Hodgins. Did an excellent job this season. Carried this grade a lot for this unit. Darius Slayton also. Listen, let me say this about Darius Slayton. I do think he has the propensity to have that game-breaking drop. Sometimes I think the moment is too big for him. 724 yards this season. 46 catches, couple touchdowns. Was almost cut in the preseason. Said, hey, you know what? I'll take a pay cut. I'll gamble on myself. Didn't play a lot the first few games. All he did was come in, be a professional, play hard, play tough. He had a bunch of tough catches. He did everything that was asked of him. He played above and beyond his talent level, above and beyond his pay grade. Shout out Darius Slayton. Richie James also, similar situation, solid contributor. Tied for the team lead with receptions with 57 with Saquon. He did have the 2 fumbled punts in week 8 versus Seattle, which kind of put him in the doghouse for a little bit. You didn't see him for a little while after that, but he made some big catches. Awesome against zone. Runs great routes versus man. Really good in the playoffs. But this was all about Hodgins. I mean, he came out of nowhere. Soft hands, good route running. Good teammate. You could see him on the field, always hyping everybody up. And it was like finding a hidden gem. When the dust cleared, he had 8 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown in the wild card playoff game. Total, he had 45 catches, 497 yards, and 5 touchdowns in just 8 games played for the Giants. Think about that. And this passing game was anemic before he got there. Anemic. Obviously, a lot to do with losing your top 4 receivers before the midway mark. But Hodgins was a keeper. And he's under contract. He'll be back. Should be interesting to see what he could do with a full season. Hopefully DJ will be back. That'll be good for his growth. But Hodgins was the man. He really was. And I think as far as next season, when you look at next season in a totality, I think you're going to see Hodgins playing a big role. You got Hodgins, you got Richie James, not Richie James. I'm not sure if they'll bring him back or Slayton. You have Hodgins, you have Wan'Dale Robinson's going to be coming back from that injury. But definitely wide receivers, a big, big need for this Giants team. Overall, I gave the wide receiving core a B-. The first half of the season was probably C-. Hodgins brought it up. James brought it up. Slayton brought it up. They all did a solid job. The passing game itself picked itself up the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, culminating in that huge game in Minnesota in the wild card. So I thought they did a solid job. Okay. Offensive line, long been the thorn in the side of many Giants teams the last decade. And unfortunately, outside of stud left tackle Andrew Thomas, not much has changed. Yet another position group hurt by injuries. But make no mistake, even before the injuries, this line struggled. They finished ranked 30th in the NFL this year per PFF. Just brutal. They did play better down the stretch, but once again dominated in the divisional playoff game versus Philly. Let's first start with Andrew Thomas. His ascension to an All-Pro has continued. 90.3 PFF grade, absolutely dominant, shuts his left side down. Giants never have to worry about him. If not for Thomas, this grade would have been in the gutter. No other offensive lineman ranked above 60. Nick Gates was the highest rated outside of Thomas at 60.1. That shows you where the rest of this offensive line was. You could make a case this was the worst pass blocking group in football. They were brutal, struggled with stunts, struggled with fast, quick edge rushers, and it showed all the way through the end of the season. The revolving door at left guard between, first it was Lemieux, then you had Bredesen, then you had Gates, back to Bredesen. Bredesen was hurt, Neal was hurt. They lost Azudu at left guard for the year, rookie. Tons of injuries along the offensive line. Feliciano, not good. I will say this, though. Let me interrupt myself here. The run blocking for this offensive line was awesome. They did a great job opening holes. Like I said, the sixth best rushing attack the Giants had. Offensive line has to get a ton of credit for that. But they gave up almost just as much in the pass pro as they gave in the rush blocking. 47 sacks, 49 sacks on the regular season. Add another 8 in the playoffs. Would have been even more if they didn't have an athletic quarterback like Jones who was improved at his pocket presence, scrambling, getting out of there. But that was it. Sixth best rushing attack towards the bottom in sacks allowed. Injuries, again, Azudu, Neal, Bredesen, Lemieux, you name it. Injuries all up and down the board. I gave him a C-. The reason I gave him a C- was because of the running game. They did do an excellent job opening holes, especially Feliciano, Bredesen. Excellent job as those bulldozers. But the pass pro was just brutal. I look for Azudu to come back next year, second year, make some progress. Obviously, you can't talk about this line without talking about Evan Neal. He had a disastrous rookie year. He was ranked 81 out of 82 possible tackles. Started playing a little better. Gets hurt versus Jacksonville, misses a few games, and he was brutal when he came back. Just outright brutal. So Neal has a lot of work to do. He's a rookie. I'm not going to go too crazy. He's a rookie, but that was not a good rookie year. There was essentially no progress made there. But he'll be back. Obviously, Thomas will be back. Azudu will probably be penciled in at left guard. And who knows what happens at right guard and center. You have Glowinski at right guard, center. Who knows? A lot of work to be done on the interior offensive line of the Giants. I actually think that's a very high need going into the draft and free agency. But C- for the O-line. Okay, one everyone's been waiting for. Quarterback, Daniel Jones. So I thought Jones took a huge step in development this season, amassing almost 4,000 yards, 22 total touchdowns, while playing behind the 30th ranked offensive line, a bottom 5 wide receiver core. Jones finished with career highs in quarterback rating, completion percentage, rushing yards, career low in interception percentage. Did everything they asked of him. Season started a little bit slow. The passing offense was slow. Jones missed a few guys, wasn't really looking to go deep, kind of playing that cautious game, the dump-off game. You've seen that change the last 4 or 5 weeks. We'll throw the divisional playoff game out just for now to speak because that was the number one pass defense and a historic pass rush they won against. I thought Jones did everything the team asked. Great leader, tough. You see how many hits he took on the season. And don't be fooled for a second. The rest of his offensive teammates are inspired by that performance. When they see him going out there putting it all on the line, that inspires his teammates. I see people trying to discount what Jones does with his legs. Don't do that. He earned it, and he did a great job. Giants were at the bottom of the league in plus 20-yard passes, plus 40-yard passes. That's a knock. Down the stretch, they got a little bit more comfortable. That still has to improve. Jones needs to have a little more faith in himself, a little more faith in the team around him, even though they really haven't shown him much to give that. Giants did lack in the deep passing game severely. I gave Jones an A-. Like I said, improvement. He improved in almost every major metric. He cut his turnovers down drastically, led this team to their first playoff appearance in 6 years, led this team to their first playoff win in a decade, did it with his arm in Minnesota. I don't care if they had a bad pass defense. Did it with his arm, did it with his legs. First player to have over 300 yards, over 70 yards rushing and 2 TDs in a playoff game. He was phenomenal. It sucked the season had the end like that for him in Philly. Tough game for him and the rest of the offense, but I give him an A-. We'll see if the Giants bring him back. I think they will, but he got the job done this year. he should hang his head high and be proud. Okay, we'll go to coaching now. Listen, outside of special teams, this is one of the better coach Giants teams I ever saw. Dable hitting all the right buttons from week 1, going for 2 in Tennessee. This team was supposed to be a 6-7 win team, maybe 8 wins. They get 10 wins. They win a playoff game. Bottom 5 talent, extremely thin roster. Season starts injury after injury after injury after injury. They're bringing guys off the bench. They're bringing guys up from the practice squad. They're bringing guys from the parking lot. Coaching staff's getting them coached up, getting them in the game, playing significant snaps. Thought this coaching staff was awesome. Offensively, Kafka overcame a little bit of a slow start to the season, missing his entire wide receiver group. It was tough, but I thought he had great game plans that catered to his offense, catered to his players' needs. Did a great job not only putting the quarterback, running back in great positions, great job putting the offensive line in good positions to block. Had some really creative play calling down the stretch. I thought what Kafka had to work with, did an excellent job. Giants offense ranked right in the middle of the pack. Wink Martindale, all the injuries his side of the ball faced, right? Losing your number 2 cornerback after a couple games, your 2 best DBs for hands full of games. It was crazy. And he kept offenses off balance, tons of blitzing, right? He loves his cornerback blitz, loves his cover 6. I thought Wink did a tremendous job. Only knock on Wink, which did hurt the overall coaching grade, the run defense. Again, poorest run defense from week 1 all the way to the divisional game. Wink never got a hold of it, unfortunately. And that's one of those things, the run defense, it's hard to scheme if you don't have the horses. So can't really hold it against them too much. But ultimately, great job. Giants were 31st in yards per carry given up. Tough. Cost them, I think, a trip to the NFC Championship game. I think if they could have stopped the run, put a little more heat on Jalen Hurts, forced him to pass, that would have been a different game. But neither here nor there. Wink's future in doubt. He's on the head coach interview circuit. That should be interesting. Now for a little bit of the bad, we talked about special teams. Bobby Johnson, offensive line coach, not good that Neal didn't progress the entire season, right? Unit struggled all season. Struggled against twists, exotic blitzes, some of the complicated stuff. I think Bobby Johnson has to, get this unit going. I think there's a little heat on him, especially with Neal. He's the number 7 overall pick. And busts bring a lot of heat. Not calling him a bust at all, but bust will bring a lot of heat on a positional coach. But overall, I give this unit an A+. They worked. They did a lot with a little. Like I said, bottom 5 roster talent-wise, thin roster that faced injury after injury. Guys coming out of nowhere to play, significant snaps. Coaching staff getting them ready to play, getting them ready to go. They did an awesome job. Far exceeded expectations. Did a great job with Daniel Jones. He had a career year. Barkley, you could call a career year. Dexter Lawrence, a career year. So A+ for the Giant coaching staff. Hopefully they can stay intact. Okay, final grade of the night. GM/front office. And I'm going to give this one an A. Great job, in the draft, which was some people would say was a gimme. I wouldn't give the draft itself an A+. Thought Thibodeau had a solid season. Neal was a big disappointment. And just a whole lot of injuries after that. But they did play a lot of snaps of that rookie group. Free agency, wasn't much to spend, so we can't really grade them on that. In-season pickups, I think, is where Joe Shane, Brandon Beane, and team really shined. Picking up a Fabian Moreau, Landon Collins, Isaiah Hodgins, Marcus Johnson, Tony Jefferson, whoever you want to throw out there, Gerard Davis, Jalen Smith. These guys played significant snaps. Were they world beaters? No. But they came in, they kept the ship afloat. So when there were holes and there was water getting on the ship, patched it up, kept it going. I thought that was awesome. He decided to stand pat at the trade deadline. Smart move. You seen what those wide receivers got, and their production was nil. And then traded Kadarius Toney for a 3 and a 6. That was a huge one. You got a 3rd-round pick and a 6th-round pick, an extra this year. That's going to be huge. Really is. I give it an A. Like I said, great job. A+ coaching staff. A for the GM. Front office, Brandon Beane, awesome job. That's it for the grades. Now we'll give out some awards. I'm going to go offensive MVP, Saquon Barkley. Defensive MVP, Dexter Lawrence. Most improved, I would like to say Daniel Jones, but there's a couple players that you could put there. Most disappointing, Kenny Golladay. That's over. Before June, that'll be over. Comeback player of the year, Nick Gates, right? Shout out Nick Gates. That was awesome. And just a really, really spectacular season for the Giants. Sucked it had the end like that. But 2023 is here. Stay with Tommy's Takes. We're going to do the damn thing. Going to have some draft content coming up, free agency content, whatever you want. You guys can hit me up. Tell me what you want to see. Like, subscribe, turn noties on. Check out my Giants country team. And for tonight, peace.